Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Jank Tank, episode number 51. My name is Timothy Zaccanino. I'm going to be hosting for you today, and in honor of Pick 2 Draft, the hype new format on Magic Arena, I have selected, double pack one pick ones here with Teld and Chris as my co-hosts for the day.
No longer having to choose between just one.
No, you just get to take both rares out of your play booster, which, I got to take a Gwenom and a Silk out of the same booster pack the other day. Unfortunately, the format's terrible, but but you do get to take double rares sometimes, and in this case, I get like double Mythic Co-Hosts here, which is awesome. Good to have you both with me.
Now, it does need to be mentioned that the pick 2 is actually a lie because we're already moved on back to Final Fantasy.
Chris, it's not good. The format itself is not amazing. It's like passable, but not amazing. But then you throw in the pick 2 on top of it, and it's like, I believe the statistic that was thrown at me was 1/5 of the number of people who day one drafted Edge of Eternities drafted Spider-Man on day one. Or I'm sorry, through the Omen Pass. I don't think I'm allowed to say Spider-Man.
What, in paper or on Arena?
A fifth of the number, like 20% of people who were there for day one EOE were there for day one Spider-Man, which is not a good look.
That's fucking hilarious. Maybe the community is sending them a message.
Yeah, Chris, keep in mind that it's cheaper for us to draft on Arena and more expensive than normal to draft in paper because this is a Universe Beyond set.
It is. I paid $47 for a pre-release, $47 pre-release.
Are you fucking serious,
okay, so
dude?
42 was the correct number, but I happened to go there on a day where they were serving food, and they upcharged by $5 for that, even though I didn't eat the food. But $40+ for pre-release is what we're looking at for Universes Beyond sets now. I think Final Fantasy was up towards like 60 or something because people were just price gouging it.
Holy fucking!
And it's not like they're premium Masters level packs or anything. They're just normal sets that have a
Well, isn't this whole Universes Beyond bloat like a shot at trying to sell more like trophy cards to fucking Commander players?
It definitely was for Final Fantasy, but Spider-Man doesn't, outside of the Infinity Stone, which you can get in like normal play boosters, I don't feel like Spider-Man had anything like that. Of course, there's the whole Spider-Man debacle that it was like a March of the Machines Aftermaths or Assassin's Creed style set that was like upshifted to a bigger set when they found out it was going to be set. There's like a whole backstory to it that made it just a flop, but it's definitely a flop. It's not great, and it has not showcased pick 2 draft very well. So hopefully we don't see too much of a pick 2 draft in the future. Though I wonder pick 2. How does pick 2 draft for Cube sound? If we just booted up the old Jank Diary Cube right now and I told you it was pick 2 draft, you get 2 picks for every draft, how would you feel about that? Or for every pick?
Do I only have 4? Do I only have 3 other players at the table?
Well, yeah, assume a 4-person pod like the format's intended.
Fine.
Better than not drafting, I guess, but I'm not going to elect to do it.
Zero tension draft.
So what do? You like bump the pack count or the card count to 16 and cut however many packs that is? I don't even want to think about it offhand.
Oh, I mean, you don't do that for a normal.
Oh, is like the last card just the last card kind of a thing?
Yeah, there's 2 last picks and it's a basic land and whatever. I think the number.
Oh, I forgot about the basic that comes in every like paper Magic pack. I have not opened a paper Magic pack in probably close to like 5 or 6 years at this point.
Oh wow! Some listener send Chris
send me something to crinkle
in the mail.
Actually, I need to break out some of my like old cards, the very few that I have left, so I can do the like card fidget thing. That always made me feel cool, Like at the LGS, you could like you could always tell that the guys that were doing it made them feel like they were real cool. Slightly better.
I used to do it, but I always dropped my shit on the table, so like I just give away free information. Like I'm so clumsy.
The only reason I still have paper cards, I feel like, is to card fidget.
It's so great. It's great, dude. When I play other card games, I find myself doing it because I haven't had Magic cards to do it with in such a long time.
What are other card games? What the hell are you talking about? What does that mean?
What does that mean?
I don't comprehend those words.
There's no like perfect gaming system called like the 52 card deck that literally has hundreds, if not thousands, of games you can play with it. That doesn't exist.
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
60 cards.
There aren't entire business empires built on it. Las Vegas isn't a place.
No, I've been there. I can't deny that. I do put the for anyone who has not noticed, in the description down below, wherever you're listening to this, I have the tags for when you can actually start listening to Magic stuff. You can skip the intro if you really want to. I suggest you don't. It's the best part of the episode. But
what if we gradually transitioned, like we slowly just talked about Magic, like less and less, you know, like a gradual fade to black situation. And then, yeah, like, you know, the people who already listen to us, they enjoy it still for whatever reason. And then one day they wake up and they're like, hey,
I was gonna,
we fucking moved on,
like,
guys.
Oh,
yeah. Wait a minute. Yeah.
Hey, Lois, do you remember that time we actually talked about Magic the Gathering?
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so housekeeping out of the way real quick. Remember, the best way to support this Magic the Gathering themed Jank Diver Gaming and the Jank Tank podcast is to join our Discord server. Come draft with us. Give us your feedback. It's a great place to hang out with like-minded individuals and talk about Cube, Retail Limited, or flashback drafts on Arena, since no one's playing Retail Limited right now, and all things Magic. You can find links to our Discord server wherever you're listening to this podcast. We host tons of scheduled drafts throughout the week, including our Peasant Cube on Saturday, our mainline Jank Diver Cube, which is the context for most of what we're going to talk about today. We draft that on Sunday nights. We have F&M style drafts on Fridays where our players vote on a cube that they want to play. And we have various guest cubes, actually tons and tons of guest cubes these days, created by members of our server throughout the week, so there's always plenty to do. You can find our socials on Twitter/X at JankDiverGaming, on YouTube.com/JankDiverGaming, where we have a couple other fun videos out. I did a Spider-Man draft that's up there. Teld, I believe, the Peasant Cube video that you put together for Through the Omen Paths is up there as of today. And yeah, there's some other cool stuff. So we did some tier lists with Danielius and things like that. And then you can also find Teld streaming on twitch.tv/Teld Talks. A little bit of news I wanted to share real quick. So DraftSim.com, I work for them for, I want to say 4 years now, in various roles. Started as a writer, worked my way up to an editor, and then for the past year and some change, I've been the managing editor, so basically in charge of everything that gets published to the website on the like SEO side. So if you type,
congrats again. By the way,
well,
awesome.
Give me another congratulations because I'm moving up again. I don't know if I'm actually supposed to share this. It's not official yet. My higher ups have been a little like hush hush about it, but I am training to become the quote unquote content manager, which will be the role that I'm in right now, in addition to handling our news side and then an extra secret project that I'm pretty sure I'm not supposed to say at all, that should be happening towards the end of this year and the beginning of next year, that I think is going to be a really big move for us, the company, as well as myself. And I'm going to be really excited to share that with everybody when it actually happens. But I am moving up with the company again, which means if you go to Google and you type in DraftSim.com, or you type in anything and you see a link to DraftSim.com, I will be the one who is responsible for seeing that article before it got published, regardless of what you click on. So that is going to be my role, is to make sure anything you click on, related to DraftSim is like
that's awesome. Congratulations. So. Also, I'm visiting DraftSim now, and it is so much slicker than it was when I was drafting a lot and using it. Yeah, seriously, man, congratulations. Also, Teld, we officially have an insider in the Magiverse now, which was kind of the entire point of what we're doing
here. Guys.
Tim, thanks for being our man on the inside.
Yeah, that's...
Tim, are you going to start slipping in little jank divers all throughout DraftSim articles so that people are subliminally drawn?
If you go to our Cube article, there is a random recommendation for Jank Diver Gaming on there. Don't know how that got there, but if you know happen...
you had nothing to do with that.
No, actually, I literally didn't, but I did suggest to the person who wrote it, like, hey, I have this community, you should plug it in this article. But anyway, yeah, that's I'm really excited to share the end of the year news, which I do have to be hush hush about that. The rest of the stuff I think I can say right now, but yeah, so super cool there, and hopefully I'll get paid a little bit more, I think is the buzz around town, so that's nice.
Very nice.
We've got a cool single card discussion here. I would actually like Teld to kind of lead the conversation on this, and how this card has like made or broken, like make or break for a deck can be influenced by like the addition of a single card in your cube. So the card that we're going to talk about is Lingering Souls. This is a classic from original Innistrad. I don't know.
Dark
Ascension. Okay. Yeah. So Innistrad block, Dark Ascension. You probably heard of this card. It's 2 and a white for a sorcery that creates 2 white spirit creature tokens with flying, and it has flashback for 1 and a black. A super elegant card. Used to be a defining card of Modern back in the day, and I believe I've heard the stories of the developers saying that this was, in their opinion, a design mistake. The flashback cost should have been 2 and a black, not 1 and a black, and they kind of regret it, though. Lingering Souls has really dropped off in constructed these days, but for our cube, it's had a huge resurgence. Not that it was ever bad, but we reintroduced it into our cube, and it's had a pretty profound effect on some of the decks in our cube. So, Teld, why don't you fill people in on what's going on with Lingering Souls these days and what the narrative around this card is?
Yeah, so I mean, we've had Lingering Souls in and out of the cube for pretty much the entire time at least I've been working on it. And I think in the past, it would have definitely just been outside the bounds. It's kind of weird to imagine an uncommon from 10 years ago just being one of the best cards you could put into a cube. But Lingering Souls gets there. It's just such a compact, powerful engine. It's good against counter spells because it has flashback. It's good against wraths because you can, have value just sitting in there for post wrath. It scales well with anything that cares about bodies. All the Biden of Thassus, Enduring Curiosity style effects. All that aside, it sort of is the defining card for Black-White in that the other card, perhaps in Magic, it and Yawgmoth are the 2 cards that if one of them is in the cube, Black-White is a premier archetype that people are happy to draft. And if neither of them are in the cube, Black-White is largely regarded as the worst deck in our cube, and you should avoid it at all costs.
I wasn't.
And so we talked about it, and we'd kind of been reluctant to re-add this card, but we recently did, and it's kind of pushed Black-White back up to the top of the food chain, it feels like. And I don't know if this is recency bias, people just being excited to play the card, or if Black-White was actually good and Lingering Souls was just the final piece for people to be like, okay, I want to draft this, as opposed, because I think in Cube, one of the things is even if the decks are all even if they are in theory, roughly equal power level, which they aren't always, but if they are, people have preferences and people need draws towards things. So a card like Kefka or Slimefoot and Squee or, one of these various cool multicolor cards pulls people into decks. And I think Lingering Souls was kind of that piece. I think the Black-White deck has been getting a few pieces across the last couple of sets. Some really broken cards like Sephiroth and stuff that kind of flew under the radar a little bit. And then the reintroduction of Lingering Souls finally had people bite the bullet on that. So card's been super defining for recent Black-White success. I think it's a card that is more balanced than it was the last time. It might still be a little too strong. I think maybe the answer to that is not necessarily to cut it, but to consider more options for counterplay against it, which right now I don't think there's a lot of good options. And part of it is just that Lingering Souls fights really well against the good cards in our cube, which it tends to be cheap, efficient spot removal and, these value engines. Lingering Souls can buy you a lot of time against cards that need to hit and deal combat damage, or, rely on attacking in the air. Cards like Malcolm, for example, are much worse in an environment with Lingering Souls, and Malcolm is one of the best blue cards in the cube on average. So a card that just kind of completely destroys that card is very, very powerful. On top of that, usually, you're playing a lot of Rite of Oblivion, Blood Artist, Servandum, all these different kind of cards that care about creatures dying, and Lingering Souls just gives you a ridiculous amount of bodies to work with. And on top of all that, we also have stuff like Clarion Spirit and Servandam Cosmonaut Zenith that appreciate having access to an easy way to double spell. So Lingering Souls just pulls a lot of different things together. And if you've played the card, all of this stuff. I'm just talking, I guess, for people who maybe are a little younger, haven't played with the card as quite as much. It's a very old card at this point, and still very powerful. It's a one that surprisingly holds up even in very powerful environments.
Yeah, I mean, so we originally cut. I mean, the power level of the cube was lower when we originally cut the card, but one of the things that was victimizing the most was blue controlling decks, which were really not great back then, and blue control decks had virtually no way to efficiently deal with this card, which was obviously hugely problematic for the color. I do agree it's more balanced now. Here's the thing. Here's what I think is going on with Lingering Souls. It is a very, very powerful card. But I think the resurgence of Black-White has maybe a little bit more to do is in terms of Lingering Souls' role in it is a powerful, iconic card that draws people's eye. it is a good card on its own. But you mentioned a couple cards a minute ago that we just recently got that all play insanely well with it to boot, right? Like Sephiroth really wants bodies to sacrifice. The new Elegy Acolyte cares about being able to force through like creatures and do combat damage, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we got several really powerful black cards that just happen to love a card that's 4 bodies in 1 that you can pay for in 2 installments. It's one of my favorite cards of all time, pretty easily. For obvious reasons, I am sort of like an Orzhov gamer. But one thing that I just noticed, because I've never really looked at the art this like blown up, Bud Cook, the artist, he just decided to go like full scale, unnecessarily horny on this one. Have you noticed like how much this ghost's chest is pushed up? It's like it's not reasonable. Like that was an artistic choice that dude made. He's just like, yeah, what if we and anyway, whatever. I'm not going to go on and on about that, but I just noticed that and thought it was funny. What's your emotional resonance with this card, Teld? Like, do you, regardless of its power level, do you like this card? Is this a nostalgic card for you at all?
It is, yeah. This card came out, like, the Innistrad block was the first block that came out after I started playing. So I started playing during the Mirrodin block, but I got in about halfway through that block. And so Innistrad, Dark Ascension, that was some of the earliest, like, I was there, like, when the block dropped, right? And was able to kind of see it develop all the way through. I was playing a lot of MTGO at the time. I actually was playing the Boros deck and later the Lingering Souls Boros deck for a minute before it got very, very quickly banned from Block Constructed. Was how I kind of got in on MTGO for a while. And I remember the card being silly busted and playing a lot of like Super Friend decks that were probably bad, but you know, kind of leaned on this card to buy you time for your Planeswalkers to generate value. And you know, I played a lot of decks that wanted to try and use a Lingering Soul. So, you know, I have a lot of fond memories of Innistrad block in general. So yeah, I would say I wouldn't say I resonate strongly with this card necessarily specifically, but the time and the era that this card came out with was a time I was really getting deep into Magic.
Yeah, on top of my like personal feelings about this card, in general, as a Cube curator, I like it when a super classic card that has been a Cube staple for a really long time still holds up at a contemporary power level. That's just something that, you know, I think what that's tied to ultimately is when we first started curating this Cube a long fucking time ago now. There was just this laundry list of sort of like vintage Cube staple type stuff. And I'm not talking about like the really broken combo stuff. I'm talking about like the really powerful fair stuff that I was just like, oh God, like I can't wait until we have an opportunity to put that into the Cube, you know? And it's just gotten to the point now where like some of it we got and it's like, I don't even care anymore. It's just not good enough anymore with like the power level that they've pushed, in Magic in the last few years. So it's always like, it's kind of the same feeling as when like a common 3-drop is just randomly good enough in your like high power Cube. It's kind of that same feeling for me.
Yeah, I'm going to make a weird analogy here, but it's sort of how I felt at the tail end of Tom Brady's career, where like all of the NFL great quarterbacks who were around in that time period had pretty much retired. And it was a new era, you know, you had the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes getting all of this hype. And Tom Brady was just still sitting there winning Super Bowls. And it was like, you know, he shouldn't be there, but he is, and he's still doing well. And like, it's cool to see a guy, you know, like a guy that should have already retired and been, you know, put out to pasture, just continuing to perform great, you know.
Linger and Soul's the Tom Brady of Magic. Yeah, I left for 5 minutes and came back, and we became a football podcast.
I've never heard any stories of Lingering Souls like kissing his own son on the mouth, so I wouldn't directly compare him to Tom Brady. But... Save
it for the other podcast, man. I had to walk away to sell some Magic stuff. I'm 200. I'm a few pounds lighter and $200 richer now. So. That said, I'm assuming you guys covered anything I could have said about Linger and Souls. The one thing I wanted to point out is the OG art. I've never really like looked at it outside of being like spirits.
Are you about to talk about the boobs?
No. That's whatever. Like,
oh, that's what I did.
I never realized it was like two like murdered humans. Like one of them's got a knife in his back, the other one looks like their neck was snapped or something. It's really gnarly now that I'm like actually looking at the art. And they've done a bunch of other arts for Linger and Souls. I don't think any of them really touched the original, though I do like the Final Fantasy one with the little robots. That one's cool. But I'm gonna assume you guys covered Linger and Souls in depth. It's an excellent card that has made it seems to be the reason that one of our decks that was like a clear last place deck is now like kind of crushing it. And it's not even necessarily the card has changed anything so much as it's got people to actually draft the deck. Obviously there's new additions like Sephiroth and stuff that have really pushed that archetype as well. So Linger and Soul's a slam dunk card that's been what was Innistrad 2012, Dark Ascension 2012 or something like that. We're talking like a 13-year, 10-year. Too good for our Peasant Cube as well. We don't play this in our Peasant Cube.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the list, it's been a pretty good year for black cards.
It has, yeah.
Overall, yeah.
Yeah, after, like, Spider-Man really nailed it. I mean, Elegy Acolyte, that card has been crushing it, and Tragic Trajectory, good pickup from EOE, and I'm blanking on things before that, but I mean, Sephiroth, obviously, was a huge pickup.
Is Carson
good cards, but they're no Fleam.
Carsey's this year.
Okay.
Fleam. What was that about Fleam? No, we probably shouldn't start fleaming on this podcast. We can't become a Fleam podcast. We can't do that. Main topic: Cube Fact or Fiction. This should be a fun one. We decided, we've basically shipped a bunch of bonus episodes and set reviews due to like the whole situation with me and everything. So why not get back to some actual factual like Cube related content? And we're gonna do Cube Fact or Fiction. We're gonna ask a question, and the three of us are gonna give our opinions on whether we think that is a fact or if that's just like a figment of old Cube design or just straight up false. So,
all right, let's put on our Jonathan Frakes hats, guys.
Man, I don't. Who is that? Another football player?
No. Have you ever seen the TV show from the 2000s, Beyond Belief, Fact or Fiction?
I'm vaguely aware of it.
Jonathan Frakes was the guy that hosted it. He's also relevant to later this year, I believe, was in Star Trek.
Oh, well, Star Trek's going to come back up
Sorry.
at some point later in this episode. Just a little hint there to Chris. We may or may not be talking about Star Trek after the credits roll. But
okay.
Chris, do you want to ask the first question here? Because you wrote out the first few segments. We're only going to ask like 5-ish questions here. We're going to go pretty in-depth on whether we believe they're fact or fiction.
Okay. First question is it important to have a balanced multicolor section?
That's a tough one.
I mean, I think it's pretty easy. The answer is no. Stop stressing out about it. Like I wouldn't necessarily have 10 Boros cards and like no Golgari cards. I mean, I guess it depends on your like design and stuff, but like Tim and I were really anal about it when we first started curating. I think partially because it was like a fine heuristic to kind of give us guardrails because we were, very beginner designers at that stage. But the fact of the matter is, like, if you want to have like a fairly large multicolor section, let's say you could have an average of like 5 slots per color pair or whatever, which for 360 is high. But if you were going to do that, like, you might not have access to 5 Simic cards that are doing what you want Simic to do in your cube and are also all powerful enough. Or alternatively, aren't cards that are like cube breaking. You just might not have 5 good options, basically. But if you had like 6 good Azorius options and 6 good Rakdos options, you only had 3 good Simic options. You just trim a couple Simic cards and then just play a wider range of cards in other pairs, that are actually like good and interesting. Once we sort of freed ourselves from this notion, or like another good example would be like you have a couple of 3-colored cards in your cube, so you feel like you have to have 10. You really don't, right? Having 3-colored cards that are colors spread against 3 colors that all, because of the way your cube is designed, like come together in some kind of coherent way as a 3-color deck, that makes perfect sense. Have like a Grixis card for your Grixis control decks or what have you, but like you don't have to have a Teamer card. You don't have to do it. And I think as soon as you sort of free yourself from that idea, you're going to save yourself a lot of hand wringing trying to either curate yourself or edit yourself too much on a section where you have too many good options, or like racking your brain to find a card for another section where you just don't have that many good options.
Yeah, I think you point out, like, you want to have some amount of balance. I think in your average cube, you want to have, you don't want to have, like you said, like 6 or 7, 10, whatever of one color and next to none of another. But if you look at our section, I mean, most of them are running between 3 and 5, but there are colors that have 3 and other colors that have 5. And we just kind of like move them around. We don't have any sort of dedicated slots for certain colors. It's just like, we'll swap multicolors cards around to different colors. And it's kind of cool too, because it changes some of the context over time. And I looked, and it's kind of interesting that all of our 3 color cards at the moment pivot off of the Grixis colors. So they're either red, black or blue, black based.
Oh yeah, check that out.
Or in the case of Kefka, both. And we have Fleam. So there's definitely a Grixis bias at the moment towards like these 3 color cards. But that doesn't necessarily mean Grixis is even the best deck in your cube. So I think you want to have some degree of balance, but at the end of the day, play the good cards, play the cool cards, and then don't worry too much about all the specific details. Would be what I would suggest.
So you're saying fiction on this. Does your opinion change at all when you go to lower power stuff that's like highly archetypal based? Like, take our Peasant Cube, for example. Yeah. Like, and let's say you've got, you're trying to do around 3 to 5-ish gold cards per section, and you've got like 10 to 12 to choose from the card pool or whatever that all kind of fit and whatever. Like, at that point, when you do have the mass selection to choose from, are you aiming for equal sections there?
Yeah, we're definitely more committed to that bit on our Peasant Cube, and I think part of it too is that it lets you, like, for example, blue white gets like a different theme every single set. It feels like, and if you look, it's kind of disjointed. Even in our Peasant Cube, it's like it does have an artifact theme, but it's like Station Monitor and like a random alchemy card and a modified card and an Artifact Matters card. And they all kind of work reasonably well together. But then you look at something like Golgari, right? Where it's literally every single set. You can count the number of sets that Golgari is not Graveyard Matters on one hand. And so if you're really just trying to have the themes work, you could put 15 Golgari gold cards, and maybe you only have like 3 or 4 Azorius cards for whatever theme you're trying to support. The density, I think balance there matters more because you're trying to push synergies, and some colors just have a huge depth of synergy. And if you're really pushing that, you're just going to have so many options there to the point that it could warp your draft environment. And I think just in general, people kind of expect Peasant Cube to play out more like a retail draft set where it feels a little more intentionally balanced on the colors.
One other thing I'll add to why I agree that this is a fiction, that you do not need, a certain number per section, like an equal number per section, even though I will, sympathize with people like myself who just like the symmetry. Like they enjoy looking at a symmetrical list, and that is a perfectly fine reason to keep your list that way. Even if you do strive to, add 4 cards per color, 2 color section, you probably have secret gold cards in your monocolored sections that are like unbalanced in that ratio, even if it doesn't look like that on paper. You always have gold cards in your monocolored sections that really only go in one deck, even if it's only a few per monocolored section. So like things are already slightly less balanced than you think they are by just looking at like 4 cards per color pair, which unless you're like one of those, savants who's tagging everything on Cube Cobra with like its appropriate color designations or whatever, like that's just not immediately apparent. And yeah, I think I have to agree. It hurts me to not see equal color sections, but I can't in good conscience tell people that they have to have equal colored sections. Like it's just not true. I mean, look at Vintage Cube as a prime example. Remember back in the day when green white was just unplayable? Like if you drafted green white in Vintage Cube, you were just doing something wrong. Like they didn't jam 5 green white cards in the Vintage Cube to try and incentivize you into a color pair that just didn't work. So
it's interesting that you should bring that up. A long time ago now, back when Justin Parnell still had a Cube podcast. He did an event with Star City Games where they made a Pauper Cube, I think, and they just made shitloads of copies of it. And then at one of the cons that they used to do, they had a bunch of like side events where you could kind of cube this Pauper Cube. And then like I think that the 8 people on the weekend who had like the best records in like running those events played basically a Vintage Cube of Justin Parnell's design. And he did exactly what you're saying. Like he he pumped green white full of like its best hate bears and shit, like its best cards that interacted with like a vintage cube style environment. So if you were at the seat at the table that was supposed to be green white, you had access to more like specialized tools for the environment, which I think was a good design decision. I just wanted to call that out.
Sure. Yeah.
That could even be like in keeping with the topic, like that is a design minded reason to actually unbalance your sections, which I think dovetails with the idea that you don't have to balance your sections depending on what's going on in your environment. It might actually make more sense. Like maybe there's an archetype in your cube. Like let's just use black white as an example because we just talked about lingering souls. Like if black white is a little bit on the weaker side in terms of its individual card quality, and it needs a high density of sort of like specialized and powerful cards to make the engines run, that could be a reason to actually unbalance your sections in favor of Warzov.
Cool. So yeah, definite fiction on that. With a shout out to my homies who just like to see the same number of cards in each section, which
it is nice.
it looks good on paper. It looks good, though. I don't know if you're a stranger and you come and look at the Jank Diver Gaiman like mainline cube and you see that there's only like 2 Selesnya cards and there's like 5 Simic cards or whatever, that probably cues you into something about like the environment itself. So
that's true too.
That can give you some information. Chris, what do we have for Fact or Fiction number 2?
Fact or Fiction number 2, you need to run full land cycles.
Fact. If you run a Scryland, you better be running all 10 of those Scrylands.
You better. Well, yeah, dude, get all those temples in there. No, you don't have to do this either. If you keep in mind what your color pairs are doing, it might make sense to run a fast land in a really aggressive color pair, but maybe for a slower, more methodical color pair, you run the slow land instead. Because like that's the point in the game where it's probably more important that your lands be coming in untapped. Although I've been thinking about this a lot. I do think Magic is so fast now, even if you're playing a reactive deck, that like fast lands are probably always better than slow lands, but that's a whole separate discussion.
I think that's true, no matter what your deck is almost.
I'd go the other way. I think the surveil lands are just the best thing you can do with your.
Oh no! I fully agree. But those are super powerful because they're fetchable. They have the basic land types. Surveil is awesome.
Not non-utility like slow versus
like non-utility slow versus fast lands. I think that the fast lands are probably better in like every color pair now, in my opinion, because the game starts on 1 no matter what you're doing. But in any case, you're gonna have like different color pairs are gonna have different textures. Guys, am I wrong? Don't they occasionally like print dual lands that have some kind of utility effect that is just not present in like any of the other 2 color pairs? Like there's just like no cycle at all. There's like some one-offs here and there.
Grove of the Burn Willows comes to mind.
Yeah, very well. Grove of the Burn Willows was part of a cycle. It's just the theme of that cycle was all of the lands were doing something that no other land did. So that's like River of Tears and Cloud of whatever.
Oh, those are all the same
Tears.
Cycle. Okay, sure.
Yeah, Graven Cairns was originally that, and they Horizon Canopy was originally in that cycle.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, like to your point, they did with Spider-Man, right? With the Grixis Mayhem land and the Bant land that could like web sling something, but it's very rare that they print like a dual land that doesn't have a full cycle or anything like that. It does happen though. Mount Doom from Lord of the Rings was not a cycle. It was just a one-off Rakdos land.
Oh yeah, that's true too. Another example of like you don't have to run full cycles is like you don't like if you have creature lands in some of your dual land sections, not every color pair has a creature land that's I was gonna say worth playing, but that's making assumptions about your power level. Not all creature lands are created equally. So depending on your power level, some color pairs are just not gonna have a creature land that you have to run. And you shouldn't feel compelled to run it if it's worse than like another option for your color pair.
Yeah, you're gonna kneecap yourself pretty hard here. Like let's say you want to play Celestial Colonnade and Creep and Tar Pit and Rage and Ravine, like the kind of actual top tier dual lands. Like if you adopt the philosophy that you have to play the full cycle, you're gonna end up with the pretty weak ones from like Wilds of Eldraine in your cube, and those color pairs are just going to have access to weaker cards than the other color pairs. And I would say this expands beyond just land cycles to cycles in general. I have heard, it comes up rarely, but I have heard people be like, are you playing the full cycle of like this common that, had a full cycle for its limited environment? And it's like, no, you don't have to do that, right? Like,
yeah.
Cycles almost always have a best in class card in that cycle, and then like one that's terrible or whatever.
Frost
so
Titan.
you just
I would
don't
say
need to
that's-
like limit yourself that way.
Well, Frost Titan was an okay card, but yeah.
But it wasn't. It's no Grave
It wasn't.
Titan
Yeah. It's no
or-
Grave Titan or Primeval Titan or whatever. I think it's also becoming increasingly true too because of Commander Prints. There's like, how often do you actually see a cycle where one of the cards isn't going to be a commander pushed card, right? That is going to have nothing to do with 1v1 Magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Also,
true, too.
like, can you imagine Vintage Cube has to play Shivan Gorge because it's also playing Tolarian Academy? Like that, or Force of Will. Did you know Force of Will is part of a cycle? Can you imagine having to play the rest of that cycle because of Force of Will?
No.
Just like, no, that obviously, I think that's very obvious to people, and like that translates to lands. You know, there seems to be a disconnect between people who like know very clearly you don't have to play a full cycle of like monoed colored cards, but then seem to argue that you have to play full cycles of lands. It's like, no, the same logic like applies to any kind of cycle, period. So I mean, just to put a bow on it, like just adapt your lands to what the color pair is doing. You know, if you have a slow deck that needs some sort of finishing power, maybe you pick out a creature land as like a utility land there. I would say like always play the surveil lands, always play the shocks if you have access to those sort of things and they meet your power level.
I
don't know about fetches. I don't want to get into a fetch conversation here.
Well,
but.
I think you could add it into this conversation in the sense that if you include a fetch in one color pair, you should just play all of them.
Yeah,
right?
probably.
Like it makes no sense to play
yeah.
one colored fetch, like unless you're playing specifically Prismatic Vista or something. But like if once you get into the Zendikar fetches or the Tarkir fetches, you should just play the whole cycle at that point.
Yeah, I mean, fetches are weird. Like, fetches are lands, but, I mean, obviously they are lands, like, in a very technical sense, but, like, they just occupy just this incredibly unique design space, and, like, not all fetches are created equal. Like, I have no idea what Vintage Cube looks like now, but, like, you know, back in the day, like, Scalding Tarn was a better fetch land than, like, the black-white one.
Windswept Heath.
Or Windswept Heath or whatever, but, yeah, I still think if you're going to play fetches, I think that is an example of a cycle. Like, and I think what that comes down to is power level, right? Like giving some color pairs fetches and not other color pairs fetches, you're just creating a power imbalance. Like that's what you're doing. Now, I mean, you could make the argument like fetch lands aren't really the two colors that they are because they're so abusable in different ways, but a class of card that I would say absolutely, a class of land I would say absolutely, if you're playing it in one color pair, you just put it in every section unless it's like an availability, like money thing and you're in paper, is like, you know, don't give like one of your color pairs like it's ABU duel and then like no one else gets it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because it's just like it's just the best land, right?
Showing favoritism at that point.
Right, but like
which
when
is okay if that's what you want to do, but
yeah, but like if you're talking about like if you're comparing, and most dual lands are like this, if you're comparing dual lands that are not like strictly better versions of other effects, then you know play the lands you have or the lands you want or whatever, and then like obviously you can go full cycle if it's kind of like an OCD thing for you, which I can personally relate to. You know, not talking down to that at all, but from a design perspective, it's really unnecessary.
Mm-hmm. Just another example too, like not that long ago in our Peasant Cube, we were playing a blue-red discard package with like the Maraudin Mako and the Stingray and stuff like that, and we had the blue and red cycling lands in the monocolored section, so like Lonely Sandbar, Cave of the Forgotten, whatever it's called, Forgotten Cave, and we didn't play the other cycling lands in the other colors because they weren't synergy pieces in the same way that the blue and red one were. So, number 3, so Fact or Fiction number 3. I reworded this one.
I just undid that. So I'm
yeah.
going to...
Well, I reworded it specifically so that we wouldn't just say fiction for all of these, because we raise them as though they're like true questions that we know we don't agree with. So I reworded this one so that we could say fact instead of fiction. But whatever, it doesn't matter.
I wanted to title the episode "Stop Doing This."
Okay.
Yeah.
So then the question is, you must have a specific ratio of colorless cards in your cube designs. You have to play, if you're at a 360 cube, you have to have 30 colorless cards. If you're in 450, you have to have 45 colorless cards. This one I think is pretty obvious, but I'll ask you guys, fact or fiction?
Well, obviously, you've got to play enough colorless cards to fill out your section. You've got to play, at least 20 per, 360 cards or 180 cards. If you don't, how else will people fill out their decks with good cards? You've got to have cards that have great crossover, even if they're really, really bad.
You have to have cards that go in every deck, guys. Otherwise, your decks aren't going to work.
This led us to play some really, really bad cards when we first made the mainline cube.
Yeah,
well, I think it's funny, too, because I think our actual colorless section at the moment are some of the more narrow
deep?
cards. Well, it's six. Yeah, it's 6 deep. I think there's some of the they're fairly narrow too. Like, as much as I love Mishra's Bauble, and I think you probably put it in every deck anyways, I do think the decks that maximize it in our cube are like pretty narrow in terms of a handful of decks. Like, you put it in most decks, right? That one's a little flexible. But the other ones are like Currency Converter, needs a very specific thing. Reckoner Bankbuster reads like a card that would do anything, but really you have to want to draw cards and be able to regularly attack with it as a 4/4. Smuggler's Copter, that one's pretty flexible, but you still have to want to be attacking people. And then we're currently trying the Rocket Goblin Glider, which requires a discard theme or some amount of discard, I think, to be good. And then Dissection Tools, which is more or less a sideboard card unless you're playing Stoneforge Mystic. Our cards in that color section are not incredibly flexible in the way that you might want.
That's a good observation, Teld. It is really funny that like our colorless section is just a handful of cards that do want to be in specific decks and do things that no other card in the cube does. When like the whole idea behind colorless cards is like, oh, you can just jam this in whatever. The funny thing, the argumentation that I've heard for that approach is like you have to have some percentage of colorless cards in your cube so that like everybody gets enough playables. Here's the secret though, is if you cut a ton of colorless cards and then you just pad out your multicolor section or your monocolored sections more, there's just more green, white, blue, black, and red cards that are going to go in decks of those colors. So
and obviously you should play
they don't create
cards.
The flexibility.
And I think the thing I would say that makes the colorless cards in our section colorless is I don't think any of them are tied to a specific color that you have to play them with so much outside of like, Dissection Tools is like a card that I think you want a Stoneforge Mystic, but I've seen people play it as just a fair card, as a good sideboard card, or a good piece of top end, or whatever. I think they do ask specific things of you, but you can sometimes find that things in a couple of different colors.
I'm going to give Danelius his due here, too, because I know Danelius is, for the peasant environment, his specifically, he, I don't know what his exact number is. I don't know that he puts an exact number on it, but he has stated in the past that he really likes having a specific number of, preferably cheap colorless cards, just so that like you get to play more games of Magic. If you have a colorless card in your opening hand, like you'll always be able to cast it, and like that's where the whole like Glimmerlight thing comes from for him, where he's like, I don't know if he recognizes it as like not a top tier card, like I know he has it in the C range or whatever, but he believes that having a lot of cards like that around and giving people colorless cards that they can put in any deck just means that more games of Magic happen, because the colorless cards help you fight mana issues early on. I don't necessarily agree with that 100%. Yeah, Glimmerlight Peak, Fleeing Peak, whatever. Get the jokes out, get the Glimmerlight jokes out. But I will say there's, just to give Danelius his due, because I think he would argue back against this point just a little bit, but I think even he wouldn't say like you have to play 30 colorless cards in your 450 or 360 card cube. He's not deranged, Shout out to Danelius there, not deranged. But yeah, we went into the mainline cube when we actually developed it, saying we want, 30. I assume 30 colorless cards is probably what we landed on, and we didn't have a super robust card pool at the time, so we kind of like handicapped ourselves into playing some extremely bad cards, like fill them in.
I did lose to some of those cards though. I did. Like, do you remember when my brother beat me by getting when the cube first started? Yes, when the cube first started, it was so slow that my brother successfully played Helm of the Host for 4 mana, played Agent of Treachery. There was so much crap on the board that playing Agent of Treachery did not end the game, and then spent 4 mana to attach Helm of the Host to Agent of Treachery to start cloning Agent of Treachery every turn.
Which does end the game.
Yes, it does. It turns out. The cube used to be that slow. We've talked about this on the show a little bit before. Ugin the Spirit Dragon was easily the strongest card in the entire cube. But you know where we got that number from, though, right, Tim? Like, I just looked at Justin Parnell's cube and just copied the ratios because I had no idea what to do. So that's why that happened.
This point extends beyond colorless cards too, right? And again, it hurts people a little bit, but you don't even have to have a specific number of monocolored cards or lands, or you don't have to have a specific number of anything.
No.
There are blueprints out there that can get you started, and I highly recommend if you're a first-time cube drafter, like go ahead and try to use a blueprint to like help with your design if you're like struggling with like the basic skeleton of a cube. But after you get your chops and you like have drafted a little bit, like you can fudge the numbers a little bit. You could have 52 white cards and 53 red cards or whatever, as long as like it's not literally one color has twice as many cards as another color, unless that's something specific you're trying to do. So
I think there was a good argument for quite a while that vintage cube level card cubes should probably have hedged towards having more blue cards, just because blue is so much better than everything else.
Yeah.
And it's like
Andrea Mangucci did that with his version of the vintage cube. He leaned heavily into blue because that's just what people were doing when they drafted vintage cube.
Yeah, and it also means that because the other colors are a little thinner, like when you get into them, I imagine like the white aggro decks, for example, probably just had all the best white aggro cards, and you still get those, right? Because nobody else wanted them.
Yeah, I think the way that he designed it was his aggro deck was intended to be Boros, and he basically had just like a little bit more than just enough, if you combine those two colors, to be like the aggro deck at the table. Like he basically just seeded like a single aggro deck, assuming that only one person would draft it, and apparently that's how it worked out. It worked great. That's definitely more advanced though. Like that's definitely like if you know what, like you really know what you're doing. But as far as like slightly unbalancing your monocolored sections is concerned, like Tim was just talking about, like I know we've all been in the situation, right? Every cube designer out there probably has been in the situation where you want to add a card, but you're looking over the section and you're just agonizing because there's an argument to keep like every single thing you already have in your section, right? But like if you're agonizing over a cut to add like a really good new red card or something, and there's like one card in your green section that's like a complete throwaway that no one ever plays, you just cut a green card and just add the red card to avoid having to cut any red cards. Like as long as you're not going nuts with it, like having them be uneven by I'd say like up to 3 or 4 cards is not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not a football analogy, but to give a comparison, it's like Commander players, when you have this new card you want to add and you're like, I'll just cut a land, I'll cut a land to play this new card, and then you end up doing that like 8 more times over the next 2 years, and you're like, I just don't understand why I don't get any good opening hands. And it's like, well, you did it too much. You did it too much, my friend. But like, it's fine to do it a couple times. It's not going to hurt that much, and you can do that in cube design as well.
Dear Commander players, Tim is trying to propagandize you into losing. Play more lands.
So somebody at pre-release was talking. I was chatting about Commander with them, and they were like, "Yeah, I play 32 lands in all my decks." And I was like, "Are you fucking kidding me? Like, do you never have a capable opening hand ever? Do you partial Paris?
I think the only deck I play that cuts on lands is I think I play 36 in my Raft deck, but I'm also playing like 5 or 6 1-mana cantrips. Maybe it's 37, and it was like a 2-to-1 ratio of 2 cantrips for every 1 land I cut, and that was only because the cantrips are intending to find. But then I've whipped back up anyways, because it turns out if you hit your land drops, you can just use the cantrips to find gas instead of finding your lands.
All right, rug pull, motherfuckers. We're the Commander podcast now. We're Freeman. We're Commander podcast. We play football stats.
Yeah. Everything but Magic the Gathering.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Or Cube.
You're in now. What are you going to do? Click off of this episode 40 minutes?
You're in too deep.
I don't think so.
Teld, do you want to read off one of these factor fictions for us here?
Yeah. So the segment 5, cubes need to be Singleton.
Dang, he said screw segment 4.
Wait, didn't we already? I'm sorry. Cut that.
Well,
you can
we already asked the question.
You can just cut that. You can just cut
that.
It
doesn't matter what order they're in. I think we're good.
All right, whatever.
Yeah.
So cubes need to be Singleton. Segment 4.
Flustered now. He's flustered.
And I think this is an obvious no. However, you should have a good reason to. I think so. For example, I think the traditional reason that cubes are Singleton is partly to be a showcase of Magic history, and if you just have like 5 copies of Llanowar Elves, you're not really doing that effectively. I think you also, once you've broken Singleton for 1 card, I think it becomes very easy to do that with others. So the only cube that I've personally encouraged breaking Singleton, outside of I believe it's called a Baltimore Singleton, which is where you add extra cycles of lands, which is what they did on the Arena Cube, right? They added 2 sets of fetches and shocks so that you could ever.
You know why they call it that? Because the Lucky Paper guys
talked
about. I think that's just because they talked about it a lot. Because in the Bun Magic Cube, he runs double fetches. I think that's probably why they call it Baltimore. But.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so I mean that's a little different because I think lands, if there are like lands have such an obvious hierarchy of like these are the really really good ones and everything else is just much worse than that. But I think generally speaking, Singleton is a good way to get a good distribution of various effects and to encourage you to be a little more creative. I think it's very lazy to not break to just have more than one copy of cards in a certain sense. That being said, we break Singleton all the time and don't really break Singleton. So, for example, I'm a big proponent of the double inspector play in all of our cubes. And if we're being honest, those are they are the exact same card, right? And we're just cheating the system a little bit. Mana Dorks in most formats are, even though you don't actually have 5 copies of Llanowar Elves, you have Llanowar Elves, Elvish Mystic, Boreal Druid, Fyndhorn Elves, Birds of Paradise. You have all these cards that do functionally do the same thing. So I think we cheat around the edges a little bit with that, but I do think Singleton as a concept is a pretty decent idea. Once you acknowledge that, I think the set cubes are the biggest reason why I would see to have multiples of cards. So jumps out to me as our Neo Cube, and that's because that set is designed specifically to show off a set, and so a large percentage of the cards are multiple copies of cards from the set.
I think the only time we've considered doing this ourselves was when the only dorks on the client were Gilded Goose and Elvish Mystic, and that was literally the only one dorks we had access to. So we did pose the question a couple times: should we play, 2 or 3 more copies of Elvish Mystic? And we ultimately said no. We like it better Singleton, but I think that would have been a reasonable excuse. I think we might have considered it as well with like Opt, when we only had like 2 cantrips on the client and they were like way more important than they are now.
Yeah, well, you may remember Theo made one of the first alternative cubes on the server where he did like a full power arena cube, but he literally played 4 copies of Opt and 4 copies of Consider.
Yes, yeah.
Because those were and then I think he played like 6 copies of Llanowar Elves or something. Because that was
a bunch of Dragon's Rage channelers and stuff like that.
Yeah, he ran 2 Darcys, I think, as well to make like that card work. But yeah, I mean, there are reasons to break Singleton. I don't think you should be afraid to break Singleton. But my personal opinion, I know I like to present, facts, but this is my opinion. In my
it's not fact or opinion. It's fact or fiction.
It's fact or fiction. Okay, in my fiction, I think Singleton has a lot of emotional resonance. I think there is value in when you're looking at a pack and looking at a card, it has that individual personality where it's just like, oh, this is this copy of this card. Right. This is the card in the cube. And I would say that if you're going to break Singleton, my personal feeling would be just like understand like the reasons that you're doing it instead of just kind of doing it willy-nilly, because I think that there is some serious resonance for a lot of players to drafting a Singleton experience. But you can obviously go off that script like if you have an intention in mind. But I wouldn't recommend that people, especially like newer cube designers, I wouldn't recommend that you do it like just to do it. Just like randomly play 2 copies of Lightning Bolt or whatever. I don't know how you guys feel, but whenever I play a cube that's like basically Singleton but has like an extra copy of this or an extra copy of that, and like I see it twice, it kind of like breaks my brain. It really bothers me.
So are you going fact on that? Like, it's clearly like technically fiction, but I guess we should say cube should be Singleton without an excuse, and like that.
I think this one is. I think this one's pretty
closer to fact than fiction.
I think there's reasons to not do it, but yeah, I think this is mostly fact.
Okay, we got a fact in there without rewording anyway. Cool. Okay.
Yeah.
And that leads us to I was gonna say, if you are gonna break Singleton and you have a bunch of copies of everything, I believe you should also play at least 1 copy of Maelstrom Pulse, because it's really funny when that card hits 2 copies of the same thing. Yeah. Especially when you fire it off on your opponent's thing and it accidentally kills your own thing and you totally didn't realize that was gonna happen.
Oh, that's awesome.
Last fact or fiction here. You should seed or have a theme in each one of your color pairs.
Yeah, so I think this is contextual, depends on your power level. I think the lower your power level, the closer this gets to being true, because I think in lower power levels, the way you get around your cards being weaker is by having your cards synergize, and themes tend to be a way of like flagging those synergies. I think once you get to more powerful environments like our mainline cube, there are kind of themes, but they're more big picture themes. And also, a lot of times we're just playing cards, especially in the multicolor section, that like we find cool. And to a certain extent, this all works itself out, right? Like every color tends towards doing certain things. So in a certain sense, it's just the nature of Magic that colors are going to have a theme of some sort. But I don't think you need to like explicitly put, 3 or 4 gold cards that signal doing a certain thing. I don't think that's something you need to do necessarily.
Yeah, I've said this on the pod before, I think, but one of the most common posts that I used to see on the Cube subreddit is like, hey, I'm designing my first cube. Here's a layout of all my 2-color archetypes. I can't figure out what to do with like blue-green. Help me out. And I think one of the reasons that you sort of see that, or people, it's really common for people to struggle with like a good theme for. We've talked about on the show like how black white is almost always like make a bunch of shitty little creatures and leverage them. Blue red is almost always spells matter or artifacts, like basically every single time, more or less, or some like variation on that theme. Right, but then you have color pairs like blue green, where like the blue green archetype in every single retail set is something completely different and also somehow not coherent. So you don't like all like the best Simic cards that you see for Cube for the most part are just like, wow, that's a really great rate on that. We're starting to see some more like tempo oriented Simic cards, I think, that are like
Well,
pushing it in a direction.
sort of the actual best Simic cards for cubes are wow, did they playtest this at all cards? But that's
Well,
all.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah, yeah. That's true. That's the Simic archetype. Design mistakes is just the archetype.
Three
But
three
yeah,
drop Simic cards.
touching on what Teld said a minute ago about power level in your cube makes this tricky too, because occasionally, if you want to run archetypes like at a certain power level, like Simic may have themes that you can explore in its card file, but like if you design a theme cube where like color pairs like Rakdos and Orzhov and Izzet are doing what they do best, and you're pushing that as hard as you possibly can. Simic just does not have any coherent themes, really, that can match like that kind of power output. So if you are going to do the thing where you insist on having a theme in every cube, my recommendation would be to find the best theme that you can for the color pair that you're struggling with, and then you might have to reconsider the themes that you run in your other 2-color pairs and find a theme that is more in line with the weakest theme in terms of power level. Because at the end of the day, like if you run a really powerful theme cube and like everyone knows that the Simic theme sucks, you have a Simic theme in your queue, but no one's ever going to draft it. So, you might as well not even have it in there. So, I guess the shorter version of everything that I just said is if you are going to insist on having a theme in every single color, modulate the themes that you choose around trying to achieve balance, or you're going to have a bad time.
Yeah, and we talked about in our Build a Cube series, like emergent themes, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're building a cube and you build out mono card section, even if you have an idea of what you want some of the gold color pairs to do, what you want some of the themes to be, like, you're probably going to end up with 1 or 2 that don't quite get there, or you don't have an idea in mind, and you can just piece together like, oh, I don't have a Gruul theme in mind. What happens when I combine a bunch of red cards and a bunch of green cards together? Oh, I get a Stompy deck, and that's like kind of good enough. Like you don't have to be like, oh, there's a Stompy deck here, I should probably put in some of those like 4 power matters cards,
Right.
or whatever. Like, you can do that, but you don't have to do that. And forcing that to happen, especially when like those themes have proven to not be like super impressive in like retail formats and stuff like that, is going to get you in a little bit of trouble. Like, I do recall us doing red white equipment very briefly in the mainline cube at one point, and it was just like, this is like maybe fun for someone to try and pursue, but it's so clearly worse than like anything the other decks are doing, and requires like some amount of cube equity and eats up a little bit of space to support it, that it's just like ultimately not worth it. And we can allow red white to just be Boros aggro that combines red aggro cards with white aggro cards, and that's okay. That's what it's allowed to be, you know.
Yeah, 100%. And like if you run that for a while and new cards get printed, you know, depending on what they do with white and Boros cards in the future, and because I've already kind of seen a variation on this deck, like you could legitimately see like, oh shit, like there's actually the material here for like if the Boros drafter drafts correctly, like prowess is that can actually be like a really powerful theme in this Boros deck. Who knew? With the combination of like cheap removal, and then we were running like Angel Fire Ignition or whatever for a while, you know, and that type of stuff. And then like if you've got something like that going on, you could be like, oh man, maybe it makes sense for me to find like a cut somewhere in white so I can play Leonin Light Scribe, which is kind of like a white card that would only want to go in that deck. But a big argument I would make for not doing a theme in every color, honestly, is like they're going to occur naturally in some colors. They're not going to occur naturally in others. But if you don't insist on heavily theming all the cards in your cube, what you're going to see if you play your cube a decent amount is like your players are going to get creative. And then you're going to see the kind of thing that I was just describing where I was like, oh shit, this is kind of like a Boros prowess deck that this drafter just came up with on the fly by like reading the cards and coming to the determination that these things were going to work well together. You know, if you don't put your color pairs completely on rails, like you're opening up more room for your drafters to be creative and feel like this sense of discovery, you know, as they put something together that somebody else might not have thought of. Like when Doug paired Emrakul's Messenger with Yawgmoth. You know what I mean? Like a blue and black card going together to create a sacrifice engine. Like that type of stuff. Like I think as a cube designer, it might feel good on paper in theory to theme every single color pair, but if you actually get it out there into the universe and start playing it, like your drafters and like the way cards mesh is going to provide interesting emergent design that's going to be so much cooler than if you had just forced everything into a narrow little corridor. So I would advise that you not do that. I mean, for black white, like black white's going to be like a shitter's sacrifice deck in like most cubes, but like in our unrestricted cube, like Gruul is just here's a bunch of meaty, insane red and green creatures that are going to beat you to death, and that's okay. Like some colored pairs are themed, some are not.
Yeah, so we got like one fact in there. Everything else is fiction. Big Cube has been lying to you all these years. Dude. Everything you know is a lie. Cube design is false. Listen to Jank Every Game, and we'll unveil the secrets sheeple, Cube sheeple.
So
whatever.
we're the only people you can trust, which means that as we transition out of being a Magic podcast, you should stick with us because we're trustworthy. You guys can trust us.
Yes, and you know you can trust people who have to say that you can trust us.
Yeah, we're never going to lie to you, baby.
That's the only way you know. So, I mean, yeah, we could have probably added a lot more to this list, but I did want to keep it kind of compact. There's plenty more, like, fictions out there, for sure. It's easier to come up with statements that we would approach from the perspective of being false than it is to come up with statements that were like, yeah, that's true and interesting to talk about, you know? Like, so naturally doing something like this is going to lead to a lot more fiction than fact, depending on how we word it. But we did get a fact in there, which is a little surprising. So, I guess that's a wrap here. I do really want to get to the outro here because I want to hear a little bit of complaining from Chris about the lineup next year. But
you know I'm always good for some whining, man.
Any final thoughts here on any of the facts or fictions or cube design kind of like mini lessons here?
Nothing jumps out to mind. I mean, you know, I think a lot of the things that we kind of take as heuristics, we've talked about this on a previous episode, but there's a lot of heuristics in Magic that, particularly for Cube, you know, are kind of breaking down both in cube design and in, you know, expectations around cards. You know, we talked about combat tricks a ways back about how they, you know, are changing opinion on that. And so I think, you know, one of the important things is that a lot of it is contextual. It's like, what do you want your environment to feel like? What do you want? What kind of gameplay are you looking for? There's a lot to consider, I think. And when you put yourself into too rigid of rules, I think that can get you into a little bit of trouble.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to highlight, like just to go back over them real quick, like the idea you have to have perfectly balanced multicolor sections and land cycles. You have to have a specific ratio of types of cards to other cards. You have to have a theme in every color pair, you know, and then a cube like has to be singleton. If you want to adhere to these ideas, then you're not doing anything wrong. But what I want to emphasize is if you are insisting on following all of these things and you just find yourself at a design crossroads where you're giving yourself fits because you're not sure how to like solve the design problem you're trying to solve while maintaining like a strict adherence to all these rules, then just don't. Right? Like that's really where my perspective, that's what it boils down to on this issue is like none of this is intended to be a criticism of being insistent on following these rules, but if you find yourself pulling your hair out to find a cut or pulling your hair out to find like a card that fits this slot that you've convinced yourself that you need, you just don't have to do it. You just don't give yourself that heartburn. That's how I would summarize my attitude about this.
Yeah, that's the tagline here is you don't have to do anything. Everything we just mentioned and said false for, fiction for is like, it's not even a rule so much as a blueprint or a, starting point. But once you know what you're doing, or at least have a good idea of what your cube's going to look like, you can do whatever you want. Like the thing I would say is have a good reason to vary from, these kind of like established rules or whatever. Some of them, like having a specifically large colorless section, I think like you can just ignore that from the beginning. You just don't have to do that. But things like theming and break-in cycles and stuff like that, or Singleton especially, like you don't have to do anything, but you should have a good reason when you go against the grain and you're not Singleton. Like there should at least be something in your mind that says, you should be able to fill in the blank of I'm going to break Singleton because, rather than I'm just going to break Singleton because I don't want to break Singleton, because there's a certain expectation there, So, so yeah, you don't do whatever you want. Do it. No, we don't care. Do whatever you want. No, no, but listen to Jank Gaming. We'll give you good advice. That's going to go ahead and do it, though. Shorter episode, but we have just pumped out like so many set reviews for the last few episodes. It's good to get back to talk about some more like abstract cube stuff. But yeah, that's going to go ahead and do it for us. Thanks, as always, to listening. You remember you can find us on Twitter at JankDiverGaming, on YouTube at youtube.com/JankDiverGaming, and twitch.tv/Teld Talks, where you can occasionally find Teld streaming. Teld, you got any Spider-Man working up over there for, or any Through the Omen Pass over there for the old Twitch stream?
No, I do have a Final Fantasy draft I've been playing through though. I haven't. I played, I think, 2 drafts of Through the Omen Paths and decided that was enough Spider-Man for one lifetime. And
did you play green white and you're like, yeah, that's what this format is?
I did. I played green white both times. I did get to do the Spiders Man, or was it Cluster? Clutter Cluster.
The Clutter Cluster.
Yeah, I got to do that with the principled referee loop, where you keep picking up the referee and buying it back with and you buy back the cluster, and
that's so sweet.
That was sweet. But that felt like the only thing to be doing that was fun.
That's the problem with Spider-Man, is like some of the stuff is actually like the mayhem stuff and this web slinging stuff, and web stuff is actually pretty fun, but it's the only thing you can do in that format. Like it's literally web sling, mayhem, or don't bother play. And it gets so repetitive with the small set. Like every green white deck you play has a Lesos and whatever it is, the Spider-Man India reskin, and that card's just absolutely absurd for an uncommon. So you just face down. Like if you get 5 drafts in, you've seen everything there is to see about that format. There's no exploratory part of Spider-Man. So God. R.I.P. Right, Spider-Man. It did not land, and I don't think we'll be seeing a small set like that again in the future. It seems like it's flopped pretty damn hard, so probably for the best. But that's going to do it here. We'll chat a little bit about future episode topics. I know we've got a few that have been floating around. I think we talked quite a bit on the podcast even about doing a episode on the state of white and reworking our white section, but it's not exactly clear we even have to do that anymore with the way black white has been performing. But we'll talk about that and whether or not that's going to come up on a future episode, and we'll get some more stuff in between here and the Avatar, The Last Airbender release, which is in November. So we've got a little ways before more set reviews hit our lap. But that's going to go ahead and do it. Thanks. I think I've said that like 4 times. That's going to go ahead and do it. Thanks for listening. My name's Timothy with my 2 wonderful Pack 1 Pick 1s, Teld and Chris, and we will catch you all next time. And by next time, I mean here in like 10 seconds, where I may or may not hear Chris rant about a few things. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to like make this mysterious. I'm just going to go down the list of every standard set coming out from this point forward. And if you have any, Teld and Chris, if you have any opinions about these, I just want to hear what your like gut reaction is to the next lineup of sets all the way through the end of 2026. So next up, obviously, to close out 2025 is Avatar: The Last Airbender. Does that do anything for either of you guys?
I have no experience with Avatar at all. I'm going into that one completely blank.
I'm exactly the same, though I will say the initial previews do look better than Spider-Man. It looks at least a parallel to Magic with the whole like airbend, like elemental bending and stuff like that. So that one doesn't look hideous to me like Spider-Man did, but I'm not an Avatar person either. So that's it for 2026. UB into UB. Okay, so next year, 7 sets coming out, which is insane. 4 of them are Universes Beyond. 3 of them are in Universe. So it's going to be 2027 is when they're going to start doing the 3-3 splits. So they kind of lied to us because there's 4. It's a 4-3 split next year and 7 sets. That's crazy. January is Lorwyn Eclipsed.
All right.
Are we looking forward to that one?
Yes, I am. But is that the last set that I'm going to care about for the rest of the year?
No. There should be a couple others. Should be a couple others. We saw some early previews, the Bitter Blossom card, a couple really sweet Evoke things. There's like some Transforming cards, and it looks really cool. And it's just like after 2 UB sets, it's like, okay, give me more Magic. That's how this is going to feel from now on, right? Is like every in-universe set is going to be super hype because we just came off of like a huge slump of Universes Beyond stuff. But Lorwyn, early previews for Lorwyn look great. Following that up is Secrets of Strixhaven, which has been billed as kind of like the Strixhaven kids go off to college it's like their first steps out of college, and it's going to explore the world of Arcavios more, which is the world that Strixhaven is set on. So
and things are going to get real adult.
You guys original Strixhaven fans? You excited to go back to that one?
I don't know if it was a power level thing or because it was a Harry Potter, clone. That was basically it. The one thing I did want to say about Strixhaven is Strixhaven had a bunch of really interesting Golgari designs in it that I thought were super cool and could like kind of point to interesting new design directions for Golgari. Like, do you guys remember that card? I think it was like an instant. If like a creature dies, then you can search your library for a cheaper creature and put it onto the battlefield or whatever.
Rush
yeah, it was like overcosted and like finicky or whatever. But I thought that was cool. So if they take another stab at that and are successful this time, that would please me. But no, that set didn't really resonate. Also, the Boros archetype was a complete disaster, and whoever was responsible for it should be fired. So one of us can work on these sets instead.
Yeah, the Graveyard Matters for Boros did not land.
Well,
though,
the 3/2 spirit tokens, but like also caring about art. I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like the gold uncommon like didn't actually really work with like the red and white cards that well. It's very strange.
Worst archetypal like gold card we've probably ever seen in any set because it just doesn't do anything.
No, it just didn't do anything.
Teld, you as Strixhaven, OG Strixhaven lover?
I mean, I thought it was an okay set. I didn't really get super into it. The whole Ravnica adjacent, like very segmented color pairs and only having 5 of them be supported is not something I was super into. I know there was like some secret decks, like the blue-black deck, for example, in that format, but the sort of design of it just didn't really appeal to me. I also didn't really care for it being a Harry Potter knockoff. It's going to be really weird, too, when we inevitably get a Harry Potter Universes Beyond and it's just Strixhaven, but not.
Sure.
So, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a hater of the set or anything, but it's definitely not in my top tier of sets by any means.
That's fair. I'm excited to go back to it because I know it's one of the only in-universe sets for next year. So that's my excitement level.
They're going to start pawning off like the shittiest like universes on us because we're just going to be so thirsty for Magic content. It's going to be like
Return to Mercadian Masks.
It's hell
yeah,
let's do it, dude. Or like Dinosaur World or whatever.
Okay, I skipped one here. It goes Lorwyn into an unannounced Universes Beyond into Strixhaven. So the only one they didn't tell us about was the March Universes Beyond thing, and the speculation because of some other news that had come out is that this is something Nickelodeon related, And a lot of people seem to believe it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles specifically.
Such a weird thing to be like. The universes beyond this year just don't even make sense to me.
Yeah, can we please stop trying to sell successfully because so many people are dipshits, like 1990s like childhood nostalgia to 40-year-olds? Like, God, my generation is so embarrassing. Anyway,
you don't want to play with Mike. You don't want to play with Ninja Turtle Commander deck. They can put the ninja and turtle creature type on them, you see. And then we could have a Michelangelo from the Assassin's Creed set with Michelangelo from... I don't even know. There's not a Michelangelo in the Assassin's Creed set. Anyway. So yeah, that one is still up in the air. It could be some sort of other Nickelodeon crossover thing. Who knows? But TMNT seems to be the consensus there. June, in the summer of next year. So we've got another Marvel set. This one's specifically called Marvel Superheroes, and it's being billed as just like, here are all the villains and heroes from Marvel. And they didn't explicitly state this, but this will almost 100% have another Through the Omen Paths version on Arena, because they can't do the licensing for Marvel stuff.
Cool, more low-res art, I guess.
Yeah, man. What do you think the what do you think the Arena version of Ant-Man is going to be?
I don't know.
There's an old Vine or TikTok or something where the guy is like talking about the discount Avengers, and he's like, "Termite Buddy is." I always thought that was hilarious, but
that's pretty fucking funny.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Termite Buddy.
Safe to say, nobody's excited about anything Marvel related after Spider-Man, so that's going to be a thing that we have to get through. August 2026, The Hobbit will return to we're returning to Middle Earth 2 years after, I guess it'll be 3 years after Lord of the Rings, and this one specifically The Hobbit.
This was the one that I don't, it's probably the Universes Beyond set that they've announced that I'm least annoyed by, but I also don't entirely feel like this one was necessary. It felt like we covered pretty much everything for Lord of the Rings in the Lord of the Rings set. But I guess we need more Tempted by the Ring support for Commander.
Yeah, I get. Oh, they're 100% going to do that. This gives me the same vibes as when they made like the Hobbit trilogy movies. I love Lord of the Rings. I love all three of the Lord of the Rings movies. The ending of 3 taking 3 hours notwithstanding. I have not seen any of the Hobbit movies. I fucking refuse. Hobbit was like my favorite book when I was a child, and when I heard they were making 9 hours of movie out of it, I was like, guys, it's like a 120-page children's book. Like it was such an insane cash grab, and this is just kind of giving me flashbacks. I mean, this Tolkien is like arguably the foundation of like all modern fantasy, so it irritates me less than the other stuff. Like, I mean, it's not nearly as egregious as like fucking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's still like, yeah, I'm with Teld. They did the Lord of the Rings set. Like, why are we doing this again? Like, why isn't this just a mainline Magic Universe set?
Sure.
Oh my God, we're doing fucking
this...
Star Trek too. Dear God, sorry.
Yeah, Star Trek.
Oh
yeah,
my
that's
God,
the one
dude.
that kind of makes me want to vomit. Like that. That's just...
Star Trek is that's the last one of the year, November 2026, and I mean, look, I am way past the point in my life where I'm gonna knock people for their interests and stuff. Like, I'm not like, oh, you're stupid if you like country music or whatever. I used to be like that back in high school, but like Star Trek, if you're a Trekkie, that's power to you. You're allowed to enjoy what you enjoy. But wow, do I have zero interest. Like, I'm already not a Star Wars fan, and I don't really even care about the dichotomy of Star Wars versus Star Trek. But like, Star Trek has zero interest to me. Yeah. Star Wars, at least, I'm like, I know this thing, it's cool, whatever. Yeah. But Star Trek, I'm just like, I do not care.
Yeah, I was always marginally more interested in Star Wars because that is space fantasy. Like, Star Wars is not sci-fi, and I'm not a sci-fi person. I don't really enjoy it. But Star Wars is, especially the original trilogy, is just space fantasy, right? It's hero's journey and space wizards and space knights and stuff fighting each other. And that's pretty cool. It goes kind of downhill pretty quickly after that. But yeah, I think Star Trek is one that I've just never had any interest whatsoever in. I find it, like you said, I guess I'm at the point in life where I probably should stop judging people for their interests, because I've got some ones that are probably, people would find stupid too, but I really don't get on with Star Trek, and I don't want it in Magic the Gathering. This one, more than any of them, I'm just like, oh God, I just don't want it. I don't want more spacecrafts. I can do without it.
Yeah, it's going to be Edge of Eternities 2.0, just with Captain Kirk and crew.
Look, if you're a
a
Trekkie,
Spock card.
if you're a Trekkie, okay, we're not here to shame you. Okay, we're not here to talk shit, but keep it to the privacy of your own bedroom, please. Okay, whatever you do in your home, that's your business. Okay, but like just keep it, keep it to your private time. The rest of us don't need to see that.
I'm really surprised because it feels like these are pretty out of touch too. I mean, I get that that's kind of WotC's thing, but were there not more relevant things that we could be doing universes beyond on, or like more things that are, there's just such a pool of things that we could have done instead of TMNT and Star Trek.
How much do you, before I forget, how much do you guys bet that they start releasing Magic sets in like cross promotion with like movies that are coming out?
Oh, probably.
Like, let's just do this. We're doing a new Star Trek movie next year. The studio approaches Hasbro, and it's like, let's have a Star Trek set come out around the same time that our new, like, schlock Star Trek blockbuster is going to come out. Like, it's only a matter of time.
You'll get some sort of promo card
or something. Yeah, I don't know.
Skipped one here. There's one other, and then I did want to make a point about what Teld just said. The last, like, in-universe set, if you can call it that, is Reality Fracture, which they said very little about. Basically, at the end of the Tarkir Dragonstorm story, like, Jace screwed everything up and, like, broke reality and let Nicol Bolas free and all that stuff. So, like, Reality Fracture, it feels like it's supposed to be some sort of, like, time spiral-y type thing where, like, everything's kind of blended together. They build it as, like, a March of the Machine style, like, big thing, and Mark Rosewater was, like, super, like, excited about some big mechanic that they're doing that they've never done before, and which he says all the time, of course, but they did play this one up quite a bit as, like, a groundbreaking set, and that one at least has my interest because it's in universe. So actually, what if Reality Fracture is making all the Universes Beyond stuff canon in
oh god, you're right,
in MTG lore?
I was literally that was like what that's what I was waiting to say. Yeah, no, or I was like, what if it's just what if it's an in-universe set where it's just a mashup of every Universes Beyond, like, property they've ever done, but, like, somehow they all, like, end up on...
Guys, is it too late to go back to Kellen being the main character? I want to go back. I didn't appreciate what we had.
Speaking of Kellen, I've been interested in bringing that card back, but that's a separate discussion.
Okay. So, Teld, you mentioned... aren't there like other higher priority like things we could have done here instead of like Star Trek or whatever, like other universes? Did you happen to see any of the Secret Lair crossovers that they announced for October of this year?
I saw there was like an Iron Maiden and an Office one.
Yes, Iron Maiden, the band,
and then Furby, because apparently that's how deep into the trenches of nostalgia we are willing to dig.
There's 15 Furby cards, which Furby's owned by Hasbro, so of course.
Do they make original cards for those, or do they just like make, hey, here's like a Furby version of a print we already did?
Yeah, so they did that. They're just reprints with Furby art.
Okay.
The same thing with The Office, which has Dwight Schrute's face on like 5 or 6 Magic the Gathering cards.
Awesome.
The Iron Maiden stuff, which uses album covers and like existent art from Iron Maiden stuff. That's like, I'm not a huge Iron Maiden fan, but I bet there's somebody out here who will find that cool. So I'm like, whatever. Jaws, the shark movie that your dad never stopped talking about. There's literally a mechanically unique Jaws card, Jaws Relentless Predator, which will get an in-universe version later on. But then they did this really cool one that's a PlayStation crossover of like mascots from PlayStation, and it has
Crash Bandicoot.
No Crash Bandicoot, which I poked fun of in an article I wrote. I was like, where the fuck is Crash Bandicoot? But it's got like Kratos and Atreus from God of War. It's got Nathan Drake. It's got I guess Ghost of Tsushima is just the character's name, so it's just called Ghost of Tsushima. It's got whatever from Forbidden Horizons or whatever. Like, it actually looks pretty cool and looks like the type of stuff you would expect Magic the Gathering to be crossing over with, but it's not a mainline thing. It's just a Secret Lair. So it's like, okay, I guess we'll do Star Trek and go back to Marvel and Middle Earth and milk those wells dry, and we'll keep all the other stuff for Secret Lairs or whatever, which it's probably for the best that Dwight Schrute remains in Secret Lairs and not Like, if we get an office, I'm not one to just be like, I'm going to quit Magic if blank, but if we get the office as a mainline standard Magic the Gathering set, like, I will be done.
Oh my god. Sorry, I just thought of a joke, but I'll tell you guys off air because it's kind of offensive.
That is okay. I thought we were in the worst timeline. That would be a worse timeline.
Yeah,
we are just like rail switching into worse and worse timelines with these universes beyond. It's getting bad quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, whatever, Chris's little side rant about, our economic system, just fill in the blanks.
That's what we have to look forward to next year, and then after that, it's still confirmed three universes beyond sets, 3 in-universe sets. So we'll see where they go from there. But it's a majority UB. And now my 2-year-old child Rome sings "The Farmer in the Dell."
The farmer in the dell